Good morning, Hyderabad. Wonderful, thank you. Uh, so appreciate the energy, and on behalf of Dun& Bradstreet and our partners, I would like to welcome all of our esteemed panelists. Right, uh, we have a day full of very insightful sessions. The agenda is full packed, so I'll not take too much time setting up the context. Uh, we are here to recognize the kind of work that is happening through GCCs. We are here to understand what kind of value addition the sector is doing and what kind of innovation is happening across different industry GCCs, and if there are best practices, how those could be shared by each of them so that everybody benefits out of it, right? So without further ado, the topic of the discussion today is GCCs, the tech-driven engines of reinvention, right? So today's discussion we are going to set in three sections. The first section is basically towards role of GCCs in driving digital transformation. The second track is about embracing the emerging technologies, and third section is about the evolving GCCs and future landscape. So this whole journey from evolution to what's next, we'll try to cover in another 44 odd minutes. So as a context, according to a report, over 70% of GCCs in India are trying or are involved in driving digital transformation for their principal organizations, right? So with that context, the first question that I have for this panel is, how has the role of GCCs evolved from back office support functions to driving innovation and digital strategies? And if I could come to you, Dinesh, Chandrasekar, on this, your thoughts?
Hey, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I started my career with the GCC in 1998, and it happens to be the first captive center in India, or at least they claim to be one, Citicorp. Some of you might know about this company called Citicorp Overseas Software Limited. It was set up in 1985. The works of it was started in 1983. So they claim to be the one of the first, right? So I presume that. My day used to be very long, right? To answer the question how it was at the time, I used to come to office at 7:30 in the morning and end up my day in 1:30 a.m. the next day. That means I have to run the end of the day program just to sit and see the COBOL program running in the mainframes. We used to have a small monitor which kind of mimics what's happening in the mainframe in UK. All I have to do at 1:30 a.m. is to just press the enter button and say the end of the program complete. Okay? So it was a lot of the manual processing works that was pushed to India at the time, right? It was seen just more like a back-end processing. At the max, you would see, irrespective of the designation, we used to be called as a PMO. So I see this completely changed when I got an opportunity to work for two other big GCCs, which is GE and Hitachi. Every time when I moved from one company to another, two things that really changed us. One is the trust and respect. The kind of technology that we were doing in GE and Hitachi are far much better than what I used to do a few years this thing. So especially the CRM and ERP evolution, I know many of you worked in this package application. Many of these rollouts for the multiple countries have been done through GCC working very closely with the service provider, right? And at least in my experience, I worked close to 38 different technologies from 98 to 2018. All I did is every time when there is a technology shift that happens, I was part of it, and I was very fortunate, right? A lot of times we don't pay attention to the kind of knowledge and experience we gained out of GCC. You would see that the service providers talk about it, but it's truly an enriching knowledge. What GCC also offered to us is not just a technological muscle, it is also the domain expertise, right? Every time when we work for a GCC, we're able to understand the business, the core business, the model, and all this, right? So the difference between a person who worked in a GCC or worked only for the service provider, I would say not just the technology expertise, we also bring to the table a lot of this domain expertise. Today, India stands tall, and we have close to 1,900 GCCs. In 1985, hardly there were 3. In 2000, there are only 60 GCCs. See, in these 2 decades, the transformation, and we are just going to break this number of 2,000. It's just going to happen. It's only a matter of time. Maybe in 2026, we would cross this 2,000 GCC. It also tells the story, right? It's not a story of just a technology and the capacity building in India. The way we have traveled, able to understand the domains, and able to serve so much of this big Fortune 500 companies. So that's the story of GCC. I don't want to repeat everything saying that we did everything, but look back and see how far we have traveled. And many of us were part of the journey. And today, the many people who are going to employ the new graduates, right, they're also going to be part of this journey. Okay. So it's a phenomenal journey we had.
Okay. So, one of my previous panelists made a very interesting comment. So he joined a GCC way back in early 90s, and he was working for an R&D center and the kind of work that he was fresh pass out from IIT, and he was expected, because he joined an R&D center, so he was expecting to do some R&D work. And back then, after say 8 to 9 months, a fresh IIT graduate, when the work was not of that great quality, he went up to his manager and asked, I joined an R&D center, and this is the work I'm doing. So the manager says, yes, you did join R&D center, and the full form of R&D center is repair and destroy. Okay, so that was a time, and this is a time when we have global P&Ls being run from India for product organizations. A lot has changed, and Dinesh, you rightly set the context. We had a very few, and now we have too much. And I don't even know if it's too much, but it's going to grow further. Not even 2,000. There are certain calculations that are expecting about 2,500 by 2030. Almost about, the tax has been paid on almost about 60,000 crores, about 60 billion, and it could touch about 100 billion in terms of revenue. So a lot has changed. So that's a given. The next question is now, earlier Infosys, Wipro, or TCS-as-a-services organizations were serving global Fortune 500 companies there, and now that the GCCs are here, what is the role service providers can play in helping these GCC centers, and how can the balance between outsourcing and insourcing be managed or maintained? So if I may come to you, Anand, with that question.
Sure. Thanks. I'll take that question. One of the challenges addressing an audience like this is I would compare this to, you're all like Liz Taylor to me, right? Much married, 7, 8 times, right? 8 times married. So you do this for a living on a day-to-day basis. The challenge for the panelists is to make marriage interesting to you. Right? We'll try to do how best we can make this proposition very, very interesting for you, right? So that's a challenge we have. Leaving from where he left, right? What has changed in my experience over the last 25 years? We have seen the space evolve. Today, earlier it used to be lift, shift, very tightly orchestrated transition, migration, knowledge, all that stuff like that. It used to be a very, very well set field. It's like a Glenn McGraw bowling outside the off stump, right? Sharp outside the off stump line, right? With 4 slip cord and fielders, right? That's how it used to be tight knit and orchestrated. Today, with the advent of GCCs, right, you are able to see a shift in this entire approach. Today, the clients are open to explore, not only just build, operate, there is a transform element is getting automatically baked into the overall calculus. This is the fundamental difference we are seeing. From that, I'll answer this question to make it more interesting for you, right? Where we see as a service provider to the GCC, where we can augment their capability is as follows. While you have all these abbreviations, BOT, BOTT, assisted GCC, virtual GCC, the way we are looking at the market is as follows. The client, the buy side, is very, very, very savvy, and the supply side is equally savvy, as you rightly said, with all the top SIs in the fray, right? So you're in such a situation wherein the buy side and the sell side is very, very razor sharp. literally you can see the competitive intensity in any of these bid process and RFP process as it goes through. What it gives you is the market is getting very, very efficient thanks to these both sides getting very, very sharp. That opens up a lot of space for us. How? For example, at LTIMindtree, the way we read this market is the market, because of these very savvy players, highly evolved players on both sides of this table, has actually opened up to offer a very flexible and a componentized offering. Say today, if agentic AI-based transformation is the calling card, the beauty I see here is the GCC brings in the domain strength and the domain expertise. Take a simple example, like say a CFO office function, like a accounts payable process, right? You already have an existing team, they understand the context, they could be in a retail sector or could be in banking, they could be processing simple account payable invoice processing. They have the business know-how, I come with my autonomous agentic AI agents. So the sweet spot, the action, where the action happens is I can augment their business understanding, their contextual understanding with my technology capability, and that's the sweet spot where my technology capability, autonomous agents, meet the business requirement and deliver the value proposition to the CFO, ultimately, which is nothing but what's the cost to process one invoice, right? If I can show that, that's exactly how I can augment the existing GCC's capability, and that's how, thanks to the market, how it has evolved, thanks to very savvy players at both sides of the table. That's how I see this market evolving, and that is opening up a lot of possibilities for us.
Good. Thank you so much for that answer, Anand. Aashish, would you like to add to that?
Hello. We at High Tech, we stand at a very unique position out here. We are, in a way, GCC service providers. At the same time, we are GCC operators too. As what you very correctly said, the supply side, the buying side is too damn tech savvy. They are too damn tech eager is the word nowadays that we use. They really want to automate everything. They really want to reinvent everything. But is that something what a parent organization is really looking for is the key question. For people like us who are operating also and providing the service, and of course people like LTIMindtree. If we get that marriage done correctly, then we really are making a sense, or we are really providing an impetus to this entire GCC ecosystem. That's what we believe into. He talked about doing the manual labor practically at the beginning of this entire era, say early 2000 or a little before that. Even today, there are few parent organizations who still are looking at GCC in a similar way. Now, what role people like us or him are required to play is to show them how exactly this probably is going to get into an innovation hub and not a cost center. And that's precisely what we should be doing, and that's where lies the value proposition, is what I see.
Okay, thank you. And Dinesh, I would like to come to you now and move into the next section alongside you only. But before that, if you just want to add something.
I think we have said most of what needs to be said, but I think we spoke about into. So we spoke about just a handful of GCCs in, let's say, 2012. We were just discussing about 700, 750, and today we are talking of any number that's upwards of 1800, 1900. I think that's just not growth, you know, that's just dominance. I think
just keep it close to you.
I'm not used to talking to a mic, so pardon me. So that doesn't show growth, and if you ask me, it shows dominance. It's just technological sovereignty, not just market leadership. But there's something that these numbers don't reveal. Most of these all of these are battling one invisible, insidious enemy. Okay, and let's look at what is it that is stifling innovation. You know, it's not lack of talent. India has the world's best engineers, right? And it's not lack of vision either, right? Indian GCCs today are building tomorrow's breakthroughs, right? So it is that gap, it is that infrastructure gap, it's that friction, you know, the gap that comes between a brilliant idea and a flawless execution, right? And it is that gap that is there between your global aspirations and your seamless operation flows, workflows inside, right? And this is the gap that needs to be eliminated. I think what we're doing is trying to eliminate that friction point, right? And if you were to look at broadly the contours, maybe 4 points that actually emerge. You know, what is it that we're actually doing? and to eliminate this infrastructure that actually is an impediment. One would be the device management, right? So device management becomes much simpler. It becomes invisible. Okay? You're stripping it of any kind of device complexity, okay? Ensuring that your teams are building, your tomorrow's future rather than configuring your laptops, right? That's what we're actually doing by eliminating that. And second would be your security. Okay? Security becomes automatic, right? And let's look at it. You have the GCCs here handling the world's most sensitive IP. Your pharmaceutical breakthroughs, your financial algorithms, and your GenAI models, right? All of these without breaking any stride, right? And the third point would be data. Data here becomes immortal. Data actually becomes immortal. Your every genius line of code, your breakthrough insights, all of them withstand any failure. Okay, just to ensure that innovation doesn't die of infrastructure accidents. Take care of that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good inputs. And that takes us to the second section and aptly set up actually, and that is India's GCCs embracing emerging technologies. So I'd like to stay with you and pose this question to you back again. As Indian GCCs adopt emerging technologies like generative AI, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that GCCs are facing? And if you have one or two examples without naming.
I think this is actually proposing, it's an impossible choice for most of the organizations. Okay. Do we outsource it or do we maintain strategic control? Okay. That's the question that most of these organizations face, right? And if you look at it, some of the most successful organizations have gone beyond this. It's not a choice between security and speed. It is not a choice between capability and control. It's not even a choice between innovation and governance, right? So I would say most of the successful organizations actually transition the entire model. It's not the question of binary choices, right? We need to look at the entire ecosystem where we're actually saying there is a sovereignty. That means your data, okay, that is sovereign, okay? But in terms of your capabilities, they are infinite. How is it that you actually are tapping into the GenAI capabilities without compromising on your data sovereignty, right? So that gives you a strategic advantage, okay, wherein you're actually scaling up your GenAI teams, okay, and ensuring that it is invisible.
Great, thanks. And let me come back to another Dinesh in my panel. And I'll be very specific with you, Dinesh. If, out of your experiences working with these GCCs over 3 decades, what are the top 3 challenges that GCCs are facing today when adopting emerging technologies, and what are the top 3 opportunities?
So today, I want to speak on the other side, service provider. Today, we provide service to the GCC, especially to the mega tech platforms, right? 3 out of the 5 mega tech platforms, we work very closely. Majorly on configuring the AI models, actually. We provide a service called AI Data Foundry. How do we provide the services? We have 1.8 million verticalized experts who collect the data, curate the data, and provide to the mega tech platforms to come up with any new models, right? So any new models that comes to the forefront, it's because the work that's been done by this data foundry, okay? The example I want to quote here is, all this works, it's not about what we do as Centific, but this mega tech platforms, the entire R&D innovation is happening out of India. I can confidently say 80% of the work, it's done out of India, 20% of the work on the headquarters actually, right? Especially configuring some of this LLM models, agentic AI systems, co-pilots, right? All the advanced R&D and innovations are happening out of India. Now India, the way it operates here, it's a global hub for the GCCs. What I mean by that is, sitting in India, we are able to collaborate across different countries and able to give a centralized input to the headquarters, okay? So think about not just executing out of India. India is also kind of a collaborative point of contact for the headquarters to ensure that they're able to kind of organize and synthesize this work out of India and give it to them, right? And it comes with its own set of challenges because you're not just managing a talent within India. India is also supposed to manage the talent across the globe. It is a blessing in disguise, to be very honest, right? When India is trusted with that kind of a responsibility to work across China, Japan and everything to ensure that the data sovereignty is maintained. That means the data doesn't come from the country, but whatever the models and innovations that are happening, that is being vetted here in India, along with the service provider like Centific, L&T, Concur Technologies, and him as well. So that's a great opportunity. But what we see as a challenge is, do we have this talent scaled up to do that? Because still we have the mindset of developing the technology, then owning the technology, right? For us to become an IP nation is when you own the innovation by yourself, right? That's where I see is the biggest challenge, right? While we are part of all the innovation, but we don't claim that innovation as ours, right? That's the reason you don't see many patents coming out of India, but I can bet and tell you 80% of the patent that is being filed in US, 60% of the work or 70 or 80% of the work it's happened out of India. But just that the GCCs don't have that backbone to go and claim that, hey, this is a patent that we developed and that needs to be credited to us. I think that's where we are moving towards. While we have been recognized as an innovation champion for many GCC, are we the people who have been credited to the contribution we are making is what we lack. That I see is a big challenge.
Well, that's an inspiring comment. I hope we take some cues out of it. And that takes me to the next question. There is another emerging trend and that we have seen over the last few years. As more and more companies wanted to come into India, apart from GCCs, another trend that started was GCC-as-a-service. And that kind of enables organizations to get access to the infrastructure quickly, run through the hoops of regulatory requirements and everything pretty quickly, access to talent, right? So that's a trend, and there are service providers based out of India offering these. In that context, the question is, how can tech partnerships, help organizations strike the right balance between outsourcing capabilities and in-house control, and does GCC-as-a-service provide that in-house control? So let me come to Aashish, you first, and then I'll come to Anand. Yeah.
So it's a two-way path. Whether I want to leverage my outsourcing capabilities or outsource holistically, or I develop it as a GCC or I develop it within the GCC, whether my parent organization wants it as a top of the level addition to whatever that I'm providing. So it's a two-way path. I provide something whether my parent organization wants it or doesn't want it. If it matches correctly, then it goes right in terms of balance. I'll give a quick example of one of our GCCs that we're operating. They're one of the largest manufacturers of certain building material, which comes into a certain geographical dimensions every time across the globe. We started as a service provider for them, and when we started small, about 100 odd number of people working for them. What we realized over a period of time, before we got into the GCC commitment with them, is that this is all possible to be automated by and large. We did that without discussing much, and what we could do is we actually could reduce the manpower to half, 50%. So out of 100, we were operating, were giving the same results, same deliverables with 50 people. So in a way, as an outsourcing entity, it's a loss for me by and large, but this actually gave the impetus to this entire thought of turning into a GCC, because they saw the possibility of this automation can probably leveraged at multiple other places within their organizational functions what they have. All what I mean to say with all this story and to coming back to the balancing part is basically GCC service provider really needs to highlight, identify and propagate properly what exactly are they bringing onto the table before getting into any kind of a GCC arrangements. Otherwise, in today's times and kind of people that we have, to say yes to everything and probably deliver everything is not a difficult task, if you ask me. But it is always important to match and maintain the balance. It is always necessary for me as a service provider to find that best line, thin line, where exactly should I say no and outsource. And also the parent organization needs to know how much am I going to stretch my GCC partner.
Great. Thanks, Aashish. Anand, your perspective,
Oh,
in-house control versus outsourcing capabilities.
Sure. Continuing from where Aashish left, right. So, LTIMindtree, our calling card to the market is, as you all know, GCC-as-a-service. We just went live this July, right. 3 standout features that as we read the market based on our interaction with our CXOs, right, the client side CXOs and the buy side. First is the market is now, as I earlier said, the ripe and ready for a very componentized offering, right. Everybody wants to follow the horses for courses strategy, right? Let me know you, your LTIMindtree, you come from an L&T pedigree, right? Let me first test you out. Can you build my facility and manage it for me? I know that's your core competence, right? So, if a client says, hey Anand, can you build this for me? I'm willing to play ball and I'm willing to offer that only particular component as a service, right? To build any GCC, to set it up, to scale it up, to transform, right? You have build, operate, transform, transfer services, the entire suite of services you have. It's not necessary that the buy side needs to buy all the services from one service provider. That's a fundamental change you're seeing in the market. The buy side is getting very sharper, the market is getting very flexible and very, very deep, right? That tells you how the depth of the supply side also, right? So that's a first takeout. And we read this and we recognize the shift and we have positioned ourselves as a GCC as a service provider. That's number one. The second difference I see, or the second fundamental shift I see, is the industry focus. At LTIMindtree, we firmly believe that one of our biggest double down investments is in what we branded as the Blueverse platform. Blueverse is the branding. It's nothing but an agentic AI foundry, you may call it, right? As I'm talking, there are close to 3,000 autonomous AI agents built and ready for prime time action, right? Why I'm harping on that is, through this, you're bringing in the industry focus and the flavor to it. I'll go back to my previous example. I took a simple accounts payable process, right? The context is very important. Account payable is a simple function, but the context varies. It could be a retail, or it could be a manufacturing industry, or it could be a simple banking process, right? So what this brings in, this agentic AI, the autonomous agentic AI capability brings in is, it becomes very industry specific. Anand could be an account payable analyst in a retail company. Today, I may be processing, say, 70-80% is human, 20% is automation. With this agentic autonomous bots built, with the not trained just on the large language model, not even SLMs. Today, they're all trained on the vertical models, right? So to that specific extent, these autonomous AI agents are very, very sector focused and sector specific, right? That's the second shift we see. So if you marry these two, as I said earlier, the sweet spot is the intersection of technology and business. At the end of the day, all these lab rats, the very shiny tools that we build, should deliver your core business value proposition for my CFO, client side, right? At the end of the day, when the rubber hits the road, I need to deliver the cost to process that invoice should be hammered down by 30-40%. Without that delivery happening, take it from me, the shiny lab rats will remain in the lab and the business will continue as is. That's the true test I would call as a litmus test. This is how we see the market, and we have primed ourselves up to face this challenge. That's my experience.
Great, thank you so much. Would you like to add to it, Dinesh?
That's pretty much the same. Where we're actually looking at it from 3 perspectives. One is the strategic core. Again, the strategic core is your crown jewels, right? Your algorithms, your competitive intelligence. That stays locked down. That stays locked. That's you retain your sovereignty over there, as I was mentioning earlier, right? And second would be your capability extension, like what Anand had spoken about, right? Your lab rats that are shiny and that are out there to give you that much required boost. And the third most important thing would be I would call it this as the operability membrane, okay? Where you're actually saying the capabilities are extended, okay? The GenAI gets to use your computational power, okay? But your data remains your own. Okay, that is critical importance to me, and I ensure that is there. And my IP, okay, still I ensure that my IP is where my strategic governance is retained permanently. No compromise on that ever. Okay. So these are the 3 points on which we actually try to ensure that when we're talking about GCC as a service, they form the critical component of whatever we are offering to a GCC.
Wonderful, thank you. And that takes us to the next and the last section of this panel discussion, which is about evolving GCCs and the future landscape, how the future GCCs would look like, GCC as a service, and different kind of models are being adopted. At one hand, the GCCs are expected to deliver efficiency. At the same point of time, they are also expected to reinvent, to drive innovation right from here, from GCC centers in India. So in that context, how that balance can be achieved, and how can GCCs continue to drive innovation, reinvent things, and still keep delivering on efficiencies. So I would like to come to you, Dinesh, with this question first.
See, I'm talking about the future forward, anything that starts from 2026 to 2032. So we are going to have a digital workforce. So we are not just talking about the talent, but the agentic workflows further augmented by quantums and other future frontier technologies that are going to come. This is not something like a fiction or a fantasy, right? 2 weeks back, I had a conversation with one of the GCC leaders. He told me, Dinesh, how do I augment my talent with the digital workforce? So he's talking in the ratio of 1:5. Here the 1 is the human and 5 is the digital bots he's talking about, agents, right? So he say it's not about replacing the workers, right? There are certain things we want that to run for 24/7, right? That cannot humanly possible. That's one reason we want to bring that. Second is the efficiency gain is not for the humans. The humans, we want to retain them for their creativity and imagination for us to take it forward, whereas every other efficiency game has to be played by the agents and bots. So we all know about the RPA. The second evolution of RPA is, or it's much beyond, it's not even, I cannot say that it's an RPA 3.0, 4.0, because agentic AI systems are very different. Every GCC, what they're trying to do is, they're not going after the large language models, they want to bring verticalized models for themselves, which is also called as SLMs, right? Which is the mode of the data, it's been trained with the proprietary data, it is not on the public data. As you all know, there is no amount of public data is left. It's already been used by training by all the LLMs, right? Including real time, whatever you have put it in your Google or any of the social media, it's been consumed by one of the platforms. So nothing is proprietary of yours. But somehow we are lucky the organizations are able to maintain the proprietary data, and I don't think so it's going to be sneaking out any soon, right? With the data sovereignty policies and guidelines in place, so the privacy of the data will be maintained. Now think about the GCC, which is sitting in a wealth of century of information. Take for example the companies like Hitachi and GE, they're all sitting with the data of 80 years to 100 years. What they best could do is look inwards, train the verticalized models and make them run for the efficiency. On the other side, the talent, they look forward to innovate and imagination. That means what is the cutting edge, competitive edge which a human can build when the bots are taking care of the efficiency part of it, right? So that's where the people are looking at. So they want to build a layer within GCC. One layer is completely focused on the frontier technologies. What's coming next? It could be AI, it could be quantum, it could be anything. That's where the human play is. The second part is how do I bring in the digital workforce to the GCC? And GCC is the best place to maintain this digital workforce. So every GCC is going to transform, incubating these two important players, right? That's what I see. It's the future of GCC.
Great. Thank you for that answer, Dinesh. And Anand, would you like to add, how do drive innovation and keep delivering on efficiencies?
Oh, absolutely. Carrying on from where Dinesh left, right? So, 2 points I'd like to make here. The first is the shift that we see when we deal with the GCC is how that is different from a traditional managed services construct, right? Typically, Even the buy side is going to be, say for example, it's going to be a procurement organization to be front-ending it. It will be largely be the CIO organization which will be orchestrating it. But the end product would be delivered to the CFO, right? Today, what we are seeing is the CFO himself or herself, they are stepping up. Today, we are facing off with the functional leaders. Here, I just took an example of the CFO. This is the first shift I'm seeing. So again, going back to the verticalization and the industry focus, that has become very, very important. I'll give you a simple example, which I've been party to the last 6 months. We are working with a large PNC player in the East Coast in the US. It's a core modernization program. The insurance platform is getting built, done. Traditionally, in a managed services construct, it would have been done by the CIO organization. They would have led it. But in this case, last 6 months, I'm directly front-ending it. My counterparty is the CFO. He comes to every call. It's literally, that's how it is orchestrated, right? That's a fundamental shift you're seeing. So, going back to the original proposition, the sectoral focus, the industry focus, the functional focus becomes extremely, extremely critical when you're dealing with these GCCs. That's the first shift. The second one is on the people side. While we talk a lot about the technology, agentic AI, GenAI, all the capability front, the missing middle, as I would call it, is the people side in the GCCs. Today, by structure or by their construct, many of these GCCs are bit subscale in size, right? That subscale automatically imposes certain constraints in terms of your ability, the bandwidth that you have to mentor, to groom and coach the very bright talent you have hired inside the company, right? Your calling card is agentic AI-led transformation. So with that promise, you have hired some of the brightest boys and girls, right? Very youngster, very bright, young, go-getting boys and girls you have hired. But do you have the bandwidth and the leadership time and attention to coach them, to mentor them, and take them to the level wherein they can apply their very sharp engineering first principles based thinking and get that to the product or the services you're going to build and take it to the market, which is going to be the single biggest differentiating factor, because your calling card is agentic AI-led transformation. That should translate into a sustained competitive advantage for the parent company. That's the promise of the GCC, right? For that, the people angle is going to be a very, very critical component in our book, right? So that's how we are reading it.
Cool. Thank you so much for that answer.
We've been speaking with a fair number of people who are interested in getting into the GCC spectrum and large. What we've realized is both of them putting together, in as simple as possible words as I can, people really need very much niche, absolutely vertical oriented and definitive agent or AI, maybe other bots, what you can talk about. So technology no more is going to be as generic as it is today. As horizontal as it is today, it has to move towards a very much vertical way, and that's exactly where we see the future of GCC providers technology or technology platform. Platformization is going to be a large player, by and large it's going to be that.
Great, and that's the right setup for the last question for this panel discussion, right? As we have all talked about, there is a need for efficiency. That was the starting need. We started delivering innovation. We always are expected to be scalable. Now, the world is changing. There are geopolitical issues, there are wars erupting, and then there are tariffs and whatnot. Amidst all of this changing environment, GCCs are also expected to be very agile, very responsive. And some of the solution providers play an important critical role to help these GCCs remain agile, responsive, and fast, right? So how do the solution providers actually help? What is that is being done and can be done so that all of these GCCs remain responsive and proactive and agile? So that's the last question, and I would like to come to you, Dinesh, first with this question. How can solution providers
I think that brings me back to what I had actually said, okay? As Anand had said, right now, the future, India is now the torchbearer, the technology landscape. And the two things that are very important right now is, as is rightly mentioned, is technology, which keeps evolving every day. How do we stay abreast of that? And how do we actually have the advantage of holding on to the right talent? Okay, but as a service provider, okay, what is it that we are actually bringing to the table is ensure that of all the handicaps that, I wouldn't say many actually, we are getting rid of them, but infrastructure as such doesn't stay as a handicap, okay, which is where we are coming in there. Because, as I said, that would be one critical gap between success and failure there. Okay, so that is where we are actually stepping in to see that we are evolving every day. We are trying to bring the best of the technologies just so that the GCCs that are operating in India have access to the best. And infrastructure is not their priority. Their focus remains on R&D and ensuring that all of this comes at cost overloads that are reasonable, because every cost structure that is optimized, okay, ensures that your next revolutionary idea is funded. Okay, so that is how we're turning costs into investment. So we're trying to get the best of the technology and at the most reasonable cost for the as a service provider.
That's great. So again, you touched upon the platform. So infrastructure and platform that can keep these GCCs, give them the speed and also scalability. Are there a couple of examples that you have, Anand, in mind, how solution providers are helping?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think just touching on your previous, the context that you are setting, right? A lot of this noise around tariffs. There is a fresh new proposal of 25% tax on outsourcing and all that stuff, right? The way I look at it is, right, in 2 words, if I need to sum it up, present tense. Present looks tense or present tense, but future perfect in my view, right? This is not the first time in India we have seen. We all know Mr. Narayan Murthy's travails to import a computer into this country called India, right? So we have seen this all. There's nothing new to us, right? We have seen sanctions before. Every time a constraint is imposed on this industry, especially, we have only reinvented ourselves, right? Many obituaries have been written about this industry, right? Every time we have just bounced back much stronger, right? I firmly believe so. Present may be tense, but the future looks picture perfect to me, right? Now, coming to this question of this platform-based play, how we see it, there is a tremendous traction I'm seeing, right? As LTIMindtree, when I look at the portfolio of some of these last in about 6 months, the kind of projects that we've done, largely the platform-based play, as Dinesh was earlier alluding to, leave the efficiencies to the bots, right? Bring in the creative element to have a very meaningful and material customer engagement and customer experience. Towards this end, we are seeing a lot of platform-based play put to reimagine the overall customer experience and the customer engagement cycle itself, right? So that's one area where I personally am seeing many of these projects getting executed where there is some phenomenal work is going on, right? Right from earlier it used to be, there is a very interesting company where we have a stake. We are an interested party in that company called Voicing AI, right? So the name is a bit misleading, right? What this company essentially does is, right from the time I enter your company through the phone, it's just not voice, right? From the phone, the call ends, the transaction begins, the transaction gets closed, the mail gets triggered and goes. Not only an email, a postal mail is also get generated, a print is also get generated, closed. So it's end-to-end, voice to transaction processing, transaction closure. To that extent, we are seeing tremendous traction on reimagining the entire customer experience and the customer journeys through platform-based play. Of course, it's infused with AI and GenAI capabilities. So that's an example for you.
Thanks, Anand. And just to close the discussion, I come to you one last time. Dinesh, how do solution providers support GCCs in creating agile and scalable tech environments that can quickly respond to changing business needs?
So thanks, Mukesh. Before that, I want to just give a little more statistics on what I look forward, right? So I also have the good fortune to work with a couple of the state governments, right? Today, GCC is kind of a backbone for the GDP growth, especially for Tamil Nadu and Telangana, which I had the opportunity to work with some of them. What they are focusing today is to bring this mid-sized GCCs and small GCCs, because the value proposition for them is delivered through 2 important services or solutions, you may call it. One is, we call this as innovation or agile pods. The pods have been created for a team size of anywhere between 50 to 100, So what the governments are proposing to them, you don't need to come with a full big bang approach of setting up a GCC. Leverage setting up a innovation and agile pods where they take a part of your critical R&D and do it in our state, right? So Telangana has been very successful. In the last 6 months, you would have seen at least 20 to 25 new GCCs, especially the mid-sized GCCs have come, and many of them are leveraging their innovation parts. The second part of it is, okay, I'm successful with the innovation parts, what next? It's something called the industrialization pipeline. That means, how do I make these pods to come to a full-scale commercialization or productization? So we are not just innovating, we are also telling the world we'll be able to execute and take it to the mainstream. That's a great opportunity. So many of these large-scale GCCs are at the industrialization. But where I see a great opportunity for a country like India is setting up an innovation and agile pod for the mid-size. How many mid-size GCC potentially we can attract? Close to 22,000. 22,000 between now and 2033. That's the kind of estimates, because setting up a 20 or 50 or 100 people pod is nothing. India is also gifted with a lot of innovation infrastructure as such, because you have a lot of this co-working space. Say for example, when I started Centific, I started with a 10-member co-working space in iSprout. Today we have over 2,000 people in India for us, operating out of Hyderabad and Chennai, right? So India also gives an opportunity. You don't need a full-blown infrastructure. There is a lot of co-working space, ecosystems which government provides. Like for example, in Hyderabad, they have a TUP. TUP is ready to provide an innovation part for any of the GCC. So India is a place for all the GCCs to consider either entry through an innovation prod or to come. If they already have an innovation which is they have finalized or ready to productionize, they can also use our country as an industrialization process.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dinesh. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of our panel discussion. There is a lot that this sector has contributed to the country's economy, and it will continue to do so. It is trying, it is heartening to see all the state governments now, because it makes a difference to the cities' GDP, trying to get these GCCs into tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Of course, that elevates, our living styles, the average wages in GCC sector are much higher than the average wages in the normal corporate sector. And of course, that education, that innovation and everything uplifts people's capacity and capabilities as well. So I wish that the sector will continue to grow faster, and there are much more heights that we will achieve. With that, because our time's up, I'm afraid I will not be able to take many questions today from the stage, but the panelists and myself will be available. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them during the breaks. So I would like you all to, and request you to please have a big round of applause for my fellow panelists. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists to make this, excuse me sir, we will need you for a few more moments, right? And as Mr. Anand in the beginning has told that I hope he has made this marriage quite interesting on stage. That's what I could want to say.
Hope we measured up to a Richard Burton standard, right? He made it marriage interesting twice over to Liz Taylor.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have a small token of thank you to all of you. So can we have the small mementos for our panelists, please? I request Mr. Jain to do the honors. I request Mr. Dinesh Nath, sir, please, to step forward. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let us thank them with a huge round of applause. Thank you for your time and your insight on the topic. Thank you. Dr. Dinesh, I humbly request you to take a few steps forward. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Dinesh. I request Mr. Aashish to please step forward. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Last but of course not the least, Mr. Anand, I request you to take a few steps forward. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. Let us capture this moment together. I request all our panelists to please step forward for one group photograph. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I request you all to take a seat and look forward for the next session. After this wonderful panel discussion, let us move on to our next session. We'll take a few moments over here to clear the stage for our next speaker before he joins us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is going to revolve around the topic, from now the work to workspaces. Evolution of workspaces is going to be the topic of discussion. And we have with us Mr. Satish Kumar Sharma, the President, Sales and Marketing, Featherlight, who will be along with us to take us through the topic of emerging workspaces trends in GCC. We'll take a few more moments here before we call on the speaker on stage. All right, I think we are ready. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Satish Kumar Sharma. Sir, over to you, stage is yours.
Check, check.